Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the change of command for White Sands Missile Range Commander, Brigadier General Andrew Morgan. During today's ceremony, Brigadier General Morgan will relinquish command to Colonel Johnathon Nelson. Hosting today's ceremony is Major General Patrick Gaydon, Commanding General for the United States Army Test and Evaluation Command. We would like to recognize the following distinguished guests joining us on the field today. Major General Gaydon, Commander, United States Army Test and Evaluation Command. Command Sergeant Major Smith, Sergeant Major, United States Army Test and Evaluation Command. Colonel Mullen, Commander, 49th Wing. Chief Master Sergeant Piper, Command Chief, 49th Wing. Colonel Munn, Site Commander, ADF Southwest. Mr. Lance Lair, Army Reserve Ambassador. Ms. Donna White, Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army, New Mexico, Emeritus. Mr. Gus Rodriguez, Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army, Texas West, Emeritus. And our White Sands Missile Range Test Resource Management Center interns. We also recognize the following supporting units and personnel. The 1st Armored Division Band, led by CW2 Hull, Fort Bliss, Texas. The Salute Battery, led by Lieutenant Keys, Charlie Battery, 4th Battalion, 27th Field Artillery Regiment. The White Sands Missile Range's very own Joint Color Guard, led by Sergeant Allen, 2nd Battalion, 6th Air Defense Artillery Regiment, Patriot Test Detachment, consisting of our national flag and the colors of the Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and White Sands Missile Range. Thank you for attending today's ceremony. At this time, Sergeant Martinez will present Mrs. Stacy Morgan a bouquet of red roses. Red is the color of the heart and reflects the loving concern that she has shown for the soldiers and civilians of the installation and their families over the past 2 years. Mrs. Morgan's roses are in full bloom, symbolizing the beauty and fulfillment of her time with White Sands Missile Range, and his daughters, Sophia and Gabriela Morgan, will be presented with a single red rose as a token of appreciation. At this time, thank you. At this time, Staff Sergeant Terrell will present Mrs. Gina Nelson a bouquet of yellow roses. Yellow is the color of a new beginning and symbolizes her arrival at White Sands Missile Range. In time, Mrs. Nelson's rosebuds will blossom as her relationship with the service members, civilians, and their families grows. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the invocation given by Chaplain Kennis, White Sands Missile Range Chaplain, and remain standing for the entrance of the official party, presentation of honors, and playing of the national anthem.
Let us pray. Dear God, we invoke your blessing upon this historic occasion. The pageantry of this moment against the majestic backdrop you have painted reminds each of us that you have blessed us far more than we deserve. And with that blessing has come great leaders. Lord, we thank you for giving America's Range Brigadier General Morgan. His brand of visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to excellence was only matched by his and Miss Stacy's genuine love for this community. Sir, ma'am, family, I pray that the grace of God that has sustained you until now will continue to guide your family as you embark upon the next mission to our country. It has been a privilege to be your teammate. Lord, I also pray for the incoming Senior Commander, Colonel Johnathon Nelson, as he assumes his mantle of leadership. Lord, provide him your wisdom, your grace, that he may serve with faithfulness, courage, and integrity. Colonel Nelson, my prayer for you and Miss Nelson is that your family will flourish during this assignment. Welcome to the team. Lord, be with our service members who are in harm's way at this very hour. Grant them safety and success. In Jesus' name, amen.
The reviewing officer is Major General Patrick Gaydon, Commander U.S. Army Test and Evaluation Command. The outgoing commander, Brigadier General Morgan, Commander White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico, and the incoming commander, Colonel Johnathon Nelson. Major General Gaydon has deferred honors to Brigadier General Morgan. Please be seated. Lieutenant Keyes, the officer in charge of the salute battery, will be presenting Brigadier General Morgan with the honor shell, the last round fired in support of this ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, you may now take your seats. Major General Gaydon, Brigadier General Morgan, and Colonel Nelson will now complete the official passing of the colors. From ancient times, armies throughout the world have conducted ceremonies to commemorate victories over enemies, honor comrades in arms, and celebrate special occasions as we are doing today. These ceremonies have added color and pageantry to military life while preserving tradition and stimulating esprit de corps. The Continental Army established the foundation by which our present-day ceremonies are performed, and today's ceremony is an enactment of an Army tradition that is 250 years old. It reaffirms the concept that the Army is perpetuated on time-honored values and tradition and not on the accomplishment of individuals. Today, you will witness a small part of that tradition as the installation colors and command authority of White Sands Missile Range are passed from one leader to another. Passing of the colors is a time-honored tradition signifying the responsibility associated with the command in this ceremony. Command Sergeant Major Acevedo, representing the backbone of the installation, hands the colors to the outgoing commander, Brigadier General Morgan. The outgoing commander, Brigadier General Morgan, then passes the color to the Army Test and Evaluation Command commander, Major General Gaydon. Major General Gaydon then passes the colors to the incoming commander, Colonel Nelson, thus demonstrating his confidence in the commander's ability to handle the responsibility of the command. In accordance with paragraph 1-6 alpha, Army Regulation 600-20, the undersigned assumes command of White Sands Missile Range, New Mexico, effective 9 July 2026. Signed, Johnathon W. Nelson, Colonel, Armor, Commanding. Colonel Nelson returns the colors to Command Sergeant Major Acevedo, who, as a senior enlisted leader of the installation, is the keeper of the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, the Commanding General, United States Army Test and Evaluation Command, Major General Patrick Gaydon.
Hey, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is absolutely great to be back here at White Sands Missile Range. This is becoming my home away from home. I think I've been here 4 out of the last 6 weeks, but it's always good to be here, and I welcome everyone who came and thank you for being here. I will say that there is no better backdrop in the United States Army to hold a ceremony than here in the shadow of the Oregon Mountains. It's always good, and I'm envious of those that live here and walk out and see it every day. These ceremonies are always bittersweet as we bid farewell to an extraordinary commander in Drew Morgan and welcome a new high caliber leader in Colonel John Nelson. And John is no stranger to Test Center Command, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. And before I pay tribute to both Drew and John and their families, I do want to give some thanks. And first is to this great color guard, the soldiers on formation that make these ceremonies great. What they do is an honor, but it's also hard and it's hot. So I'm going to give them an order right now to unseat the colors, go to rest, and shake it out. While they're doing that, I want to thank the Iron Soldiers that are here, the 1st Armored Division Band, the Salute Battery, and again, fight the enemy, not the plan. I'm an artilleryman, and if you get a jam, you fight through it, and they did that this morning, so my thanks to them. Thanks to Chaplain Kennis, Rocio, our MC, who always does a great job here, and all the other people that made this ceremony happen, protocol, public affairs, the staff that put this together. I want to welcome all our distinguished guests. We've got some civilian aides to the Secretary of the Army Emeritus here, so it's great to see you. We've got an Army Reserve Ambassador here, a USA President for the 4th Region, so thank you all for being here. Rosario called everybody out, so I'm not going to go through that long list, but all of our joint partners that are here from the Air Force, the Navy, the Space Force, and there's probably a Marine here as well, so welcome. Our university partners, we have a symbiotic win-win relationship with the universities here. We bring the talent in, you help us further develop that talent, so thanks for being here. So next I want to recognize Drew and John's families, and no one gets very far at all in life without the love and support of their families. And command can be very lonely, and without that support, I don't know that any of us could do it. And John and Drew are both in that category. I'm going to start with Drew's wife of 28 years, Stacy. Thanks for your support to Drew, for raising your family, and all you did, Stacy, for the White Sands Missile Range community. Stacy revitalized the Spouses Club here, connecting our spouses to the support. She advocated for spouse initiatives, brought back activities and events that promoted camaraderie, and helped as an ambassador for White Sands Missile Range to our other bases around here, like Fort Bliss and Holloman Air Force Base, doing speaking engagements and just being present. I want to welcome their 2 daughters, Sophia going into her senior year of high school, and Gabriella going into sophomore year. I know your dad's proud of you. And the other two members of the family couldn't be here. Daniel is a newly minted second lieutenant going through air defense training right now. And Amelia is entering her junior year at the University of Pennsylvania and studying abroad in France. I want to welcome Gina, who I know from her time at Yuma Proving Grounds. Gina and John have been married for 30 years, high school sweethearts. Both their parents were at Fort Knox, and they met in the 11th grade. So Gina, welcome. And while at Yuma Proving Grounds, Gina led the Catholic community, cooking dinners on Sundays, and also a couple times a year, a large quantity of Marines. Felt good after you fed them as well, so welcome, Gina. Changes of command tend to focus on the outgoing and the incoming commander, but they're first and foremost about the organization. Commanders come and go, but the organization, like the Army song says, keeps rolling along. So the first group I want to talk to is the White Sands Missile Range workforce, the great, talented, and dedicated workforce here. The engineers, scientists, data analysts, test officers, all the technicians that run the instrumentation here. They run the fast burst reactor, the directed energy, high energy laser systems, and everything else. And as a mechanical engineer myself, I'm envious of what you all do on a daily basis. There's nowhere in the world like White Sands Missile Range. It's our largest missile range in America across the Department of War. And it's the Army and the Department of War's center of gravity for our two most pressing test missions, air and missile defense and long-range fires. And there's an incredible history at this range. Goes back almost 90 years when Goddard of NASA fame was doing experimentation out here. In 1941, the Army Air Forces established a gunnery and bombing range here. And then in 1945, White Sands Proving Ground was established by the U.S. Army. And we know the history of what happened in 1945, strategically important events up at Trinity, and I happened to visit there yesterday, which was a bucket list item. And then in 1958, White Sands became the missile range that it is today. But practically every missile system that the Army, the Navy, the Air Force has ever put into service members' hands has been put through its places here. And one other odd fact I didn't know until yesterday is in the early 1990s, when this thing called ARPANET and DARPANET, before the internet was around, White Sands hosted more software on ARPANET than any other place in the world. It's not just that it's the largest range, it's the special use airspace above us that goes all the way to the limits of outer space. The instrumentation that's here, the exquisite radars and telemetry and optics, and then people, the most important thing. Decades of experience and knowledge to run this range and run the instrumentation here with all the special skill sets to do things like missile flight test safety, range operations, all the instrumentation and technicians and operators and meteorologists that are out here. That is what makes the range. And that experience doesn't grow on trees and you can't snap your finger and create it. It's groomed over years, and the people here make the difference. White Sands Missile Range is truly America's range. It's a national treasure, both the range and the people. And our nation and our military wouldn't be where we are today without that history I just talked about that White Sands Missile Range provided. And we certainly won't be where we need to go in the future. So from me to the White Sands Missile Range workforce, thanks to each of you for who you are and what you do. Let me talk about Drew Morgan, our outgoing commander. Just 1 year in command, but made a tremendous, impactful difference here. Drew came to us as a colonel. He leaves as a general officer, well-deserved. And as the commanding general of White Sands Missile Range, he was responsible for 39 joint tenant organizations, over 6,000 service members, family members, civilians that either live or work here. He's a culture builder, a positive leader, humble and focused on the team and the mission. And he brought back the moniker America's Range First to Test. This invoked pride across the workforce and an identity here that I see every time I show up. He's a team builder. He merged the WISMR and the test center staff together into a single unified staff that works for one commander, focused first and foremost on the test mission sets. On the team building side in joint, he made great strides to develop one team with the Air Force, the Navy, the Space Force, and cooperate and make it more efficient on this range. He recognized that the range isn't the Army's range, it's the nation's made range, America's range. And we prioritize here based on the National Defense Strategy, not a single service's equities. Drew also wore the hat, a second hat, as the Deputy Commanding General for Developmental Tests, my deputy commander in ATEC. So he helped to synchronize all the test ranges across the Army, not just White Sands, but Yuma, Redstone, Dugway, Aberdeen, and the electronic proving grounds at Fort Huachuca. And I can't say how much I appreciated this part of what Drew did, wearing that hat. He took things off my plate so that I could focus on things only I could do. Drew wasn't just the mission commander here, he was the senior commander with all the responsibilities, authorities, stress, and headaches that come with that. But he focused on soldier and family programs, the infrastructure here, readiness, the environment, and base operations and security. He increased White Sands Missile Range's engagement with our local and our state partners. And I know I can't talk forever, so I'm going to just talk about two examples of Drew's leadership. One was the lapse in appropriation, the government shutdown that happened back in October, November. We cannot afford not to test here. We're booked for 2 years at a time, and if we delay here, that's a delay of capability to our nation and our service members all around the world. Drew recognized that with the team around him. We had a $30 to $40 million missile flight test sunk cost on the second day after that government shutdown. And when those shutdowns happen, we're not allowed to plan for them. We have to react. So that's sheer chaos across the department. So there was no guidance on what to keep doing, what not to keep doing, nothing on accepted or exempted activities. So Drew worked, number one, he was transparent with his workforce, saying, come to work until we know what's going on, and we'll do an orderly shutdown. And at the same time, work with me all the way to the top level of the armies. And that missile flight test, they underwrote the risk, and that flight test happened. And this led the way for all of ATEC to continue a lot of our testing during that shutdown. And White Sands led the way with that. The other one I want to talk about is his senior command and the Baton Death March that happens here annually, a huge event that showcases White Sands to the community. About a week out from that event this past year, we knew it was going to be 100 degrees, and we also knew that a lot of the medical support that comes from all over the nation had dropped out. And Drew, as he calculated risk, did two things, or had two options. He could cancel it completely and lose this opportunity, or he can accept unacceptable risk, and something bad could happen. And Drew, as he always does, thought through all the variables and came up with another course of action, 15-mile event that did everything it was supposed to, 5,000 attendees, over 6,000 spectators, made the event happen, and I thank him for that. So as commanding general, Drew has been calm, confident leader. He's had a culture of mission accomplishment. He's been fair to his workforce. So Drew, thanks for your leadership, which was absolutely steady. And I know this workforce and all of ATEC thanks you for everything you've done. What's next for the Morgans? They're headed off to Colorado, headed to U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command at Peterson Space Force Base. And I would say that, Drew, you leave behind a great legacy here, and you also leave an organization that's better, stronger, and more connected than you found it. And I don't think anyone could ask for more. I can say with confidence that, Drew, you're leaving White Sands Missile Range in good hands with John Nelson. The incoming commander, I'll just start by saying John is not a rookie commander. He joins White Sands after 3 years commanding a test center at Yuma Proving Grounds, the Army's second largest test range. John was a positive, engaged leader. He led by example, had no ego, and he set the vision and the culture at Yuma. He unleashed the great workforce to do great things, and he now brings that style of leadership here to White Sands Missile Range. It's not normal for a commander to command twice at the colonel level, so you might be asking, how did that happen? Well, Drew and I nominated John, and we went to the top of the Army. The undersecretary and the vice approved it, and Drew personally talked it with the chief of staff of the Army, and they said yes. He's uniquely qualified to command White Sands. He's an acquisition officer, but I would call him a special kind of acquisition officer who has more test experience than anyone uniformed in the Army, 8 years. He was a test officer in operational test command and evaluator at Aberdeen, 3 years in command at Yuma. So John, congratulations. I have no doubt at all that you'll continue the great momentum here that Drew has handed off to you. And even though you never really left, welcome back to the ATEC team for the 4th time. I'll close by saying welcome back to Gina as well. Thanks for your support to John. Drew and Stacy, thank you for all you've done for the ATEC and the Wismer team, and we wish you the best in your next assignment. And to the great workforce here, thanks for who you are and all you've done. You are America's range, first to test. Truth in testing, Army strong, this will defend.
Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Andrew Morgan.
Well, we have already demonstrated what we do best here, which is adapt and overcome. That's the Wismer way. Thank you for everybody for dodging or helping us roll with those punches a little bit. There's no ceremonies like the ones we do here at White Sands Missile Range with this great backdrop, with that awesome color guard, joint color guard, 1st Armored Division band, and the battery. There's nothing like it in the world, and I'm going to miss that. And this is the 3rd ceremony now that we've had just in 6 weeks, and we still have another here with Colonel Moser's coming up here in just 2 weeks. And General Gaydon, thank you for the kind words, and Command Sergeant Major Smith, and distinguished guests, thank you for being here today. I do want to reiterate the presence of our valued mission partners that make this range joint. The 49th Wing Commander at Holloman Air Force Base, Colonel Stryker Mullen, and Deputy Wing Commander Badger Stripling, and their SEL Chief Master Sergeant Piper. Really appreciate you, and had a great time with that Finney flight in the F-16 earlier this week. That was outstanding. The 704th Test Group Commander, Colonel Derek Spear, and his SEL Senior Master Sergeant McClure. Space Force Delta 23 Command Team, Colonel Scott Munn and Senior Master Sergeant Corey Takaki. ATEC leaders that traveled to be here, like Colonel Dave Taylor from EPG and Colonel Tony Falcon from OEC down at Fort Bliss. And then Spaceport America, represented by Chief Master Sergeant retired Alan Turk. And my family and friends, a smaller group than we had at my last ceremony, but I'd like to acknowledge, of course, though, that my wife and our 2 youngest daughters, Sophia and Gabriella, are here, and our other 2 off on their own adventures. Some good friends, U.S. Army Colonel retired Ramey Wilson. He and his wife Lisa have been very dear friends to us over the last 28 years, and Ramey's an accomplished military physician in the D.C. area. And then I've had a steady stream of NASA astronaut colleagues visit over the last year, and today I'm honored to have a friend and colleague, U.S. Marine Corps Colonel retired C.J. Sturkow, a senior test pilot out at Spaceport. He won't want me to say any of this, but he piloted and commanded the space shuttle 4 times and has test flown 6 suborbital flights for Virgin Galactic in the last decade. There is no more experienced test pilot in the country, and that's high praise on this storied range. Thank you for being here, both of you. Yesterday, we held our quarterly honors and retirement ceremony where I was able to thank our outstanding workforce and acknowledge our great staff, the directors and leaders, in a more intimate setting than out here today. But thank you all for coming out today, and my remarks today are for you. We had a special surprise at that ceremony yesterday. He's here again today. Mr. Manny Lopez, a beloved Wismer IT engineer who retired in 2011. So 15 years ago, he retired. after 52 years of service to this range. Mr. Lopez, please stand. I think you're over there in my tent. There, give him a round of applause. That's the dedicated workforce we have here. Mr. Lopez is the only member of the audience who was a personal witness to the historical anecdote that I'm about to describe. Now, some of you may recognize this lectern now as the JFK podium that we've pulled out from the Wismer Museum for ceremonies a couple of times in the recent couple weeks, as recently as my promotion in May. Our museum director, Darren Court, has always been generous with loaning it, but judicious because it is, after all, a historical artifact, normally kept behind plexiglass on display in our great museum collection. I was pushing my limit when I asked them to use it twice in 2 months, but I submit that this moment is more relevant to highlight this piece of history than any other time since President John F. Kennedy spoke from this exact same podium in June 1963. Manny Lopez was present. Not a half mile from here, just in front of the Cox Range Operations Building. Another moment when the world was in the midst of great power competition and when the nation looked to this range for answers. At this same podium and reflecting on this past year, I want you all to sense the continuous arc that brings us full circle from then to now. In a short 2.5-minute speech, President Kennedy directly addressed the Wismer workforce. At that point, already 18 years after the Trinity test, and 17 years beyond the first rocket launches to space from Launch Complex 33, just down the hill from here. The president reflected that working at this place in this time, quote, must give you the greatest possible satisfaction because never in history has so much depended upon one people. And I think that never in history has one people been so willing to assume that responsibility. This workforce, your predecessors. JFK's words in 1963, now as poignant as they've been at any other time in the 63 years since. Just 2 weeks ago, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, joined by a combatant commander and a constellation of 3- and 4-star generals, descended on this same ground. Their visit centered on Live Fire Test 26, a demonstration that showcased why White Sands Missile Range remains the place where America depends on you to test the truth and be the first to do it. It was a moment that signaled to our allies, our partners, and our competitors that the United States is transforming rapidly and that the Army and the Joint Forces modernization is not words, it is action. A podium and a presidential quotation may not be convincing enough to prove to you that we're at a point of historical symmetry. On this same date, July 9th, 1945, exactly 81 years ago today, the Department of War established White Sands Proving Ground in order. And now I'm finally revealing to the protocol team why I was so insistent on this being the date for the change of command. A week from now, we'll mark the 81st anniversary of Trinity. They were only a week apart, the establishment of this range and the Trinity blast. The world's first nuclear test, the culmination of the Manhattan Project, our most secretive program at the time, and a historical inflection point that reshaped the strategic narrative of the last century. Live Fire Test 26 underscored a new era of national level priorities, proving out at America's range by Team Wismer. It was a modern turning point born from thousands of hours of planning, instrumenting, rehearsing, integrating, and innovating. It required the talent of soldiers, civilians, contractors, and mission partners across the range. It required compromise and grace from many of our longtime tenants, customers, and allies. But ultimately, it reminded our nation that White Sands Missile Range remains exactly what it was built to be, the proving ground for America's most consequential capabilities. Just last month at our Army 251st birthday ball, Lieutenant General Frank Lozano, who leads the Army's Artillery and Air Defense Modernization Portfolio, PAE Fires, offered a description of White Sands Missile Range that captured our identity with clarity. He called America's range 2.2 million acres of national purpose. This is a fitting description At 100 miles by 40 miles, there is no fair comparison between Wismar and any other open-air test range. But Wismar is more than a place with unprecedented authorities to do just about anything, from surface to space and across the electromagnetic spectrum. We also host unique instruments, radars, telemetry, and optics that also have no peer. But most importantly, it's a collection of people. Team Wismar with unparalleled skill sets that cannot be mass-produced overnight, a point that I re-emphasized with the Secretary of the Army when he visited just a few weeks before Secretary Hegseth. As a collective whole, Wismar is an instrument. It's an instrument of military power, one that enables our Army, Joint Force, and commercial partners to test what cannot be tested anywhere else. This team, Team Wismar, has embraced this responsibility fully. You've made our Team Wismar vision real, cultivating innovation, modernizing our unique capabilities, and accelerating transformation. You've strengthened relationships with mission partners, and you've demonstrated professionalism and pride on a high-risk, high-complexity range. These last few months, the nation's demands have pushed us to our limits to once again prove to our country that we have been and always will be America's range. The Army Test and Evaluation Enterprise, along with our sister service counterparts, are ensuring that we will not falter. Thank you to our commander and host today, Major General Gaydon and Command Sergeant Major Smith, for your leadership during this unprecedented time. And thank you for entrusting me and Command Sergeant Major Acevedo with this command, and for your patient, thoughtful, and deliberate transformative leadership of ATEC. Your vision for Army Test and Evaluation has guided Wismar's renaissance this past year. Command Sergeant Major Acevedo, thank you for sharing and guiding a vision for Team Wismar. Stacy and I couldn't have asked for better partners in you and Stephanie in amplifying the mission and its people. I rest easier knowing that you'll be leading continuity long after we depart. And to my wife, Stacy, thank you for continuing to rise to every occasion that the Army presents, from deployments around the globe or orbiting above it, to the middle of the Pacific, to the middle of the desert. It's been a special year here at White Sands at America's Range, and as always, you've been the steady center that makes our family's service possible. Thank you, and I love you. It's bittersweet to leave command, as General Gaydon has alluded, especially at this historical time when momentum is clearly building, when the team is aligned, and when the mission is entering this thrilling new chapter. But the Army has a way of putting the right leader in the right place at the right time. I've had the privilege of working with Colonel John Nelson this past year in his recent role as the senior commander of Yuma Proving Ground, his final year of a highly successful 3-year command there, and I've witnessed his judgment firsthand, his technical acumen, and his ability to bring clarity to complex missions. As General Gaydon mentioned, he was hand-selected by General Gaydon and I, and endorsed by the Chief of Staff of the Army to take command of Wismar, a rare opportunity. That's some weighty confidence. As I look back at the names of the great White Sands Missile Range senior commanders that preceded us, I don't know of one that arrived more prepared to take on this challenge as you have, John. A strong tactical foundation, background in a test evaluation, prior senior commander and extensive ATEC experience already, and above all else, impeccable character and unflappable demeanor. I venture to say, John, you could mentor me on how I could have done better in this job. He brings deep experience, steady leadership, and an instinct for innovation that's right for this moment to carry America's range forward. John and Gina, Team Wismar is ready for you, and this range will rise even higher under your stewardship. As I close, I return to this podium, this place, this moment in history, standing where President Kennedy once stood, on the anniversary of the very proving ground in a year where the entire country has reflected on this country's founding 250 years ago and what makes it a great power. We're reminded that the story of White Sands Missile Range is inseparable from the story of American strength and defined its leadership in the world. President Kennedy's words again, spoken from this podium, words that speak directly to Team Wismar, then and now. He said, "What you do here far away from Washington, far away from some of our great capitals, far away from so many countries which depended upon us. What you do here, what progress you make, what dedication you demonstrate, makes a significant difference to the security of our country and to those who depend upon us. That is a most unique role to play. And I know you feel the same sense of pride in your chance, in your time, and in your day to play a part in the life of the great republic. Those words will ring through the Tularosa Basin for another 10 decades. The Wismer workforce that came before you tested systems that shaped the world order. You are testing the systems that will shape the future world order. And we will be stronger because of you. And I thank you, and the nation thanks you. You are Team Wismer. You are America's Range. You are the first to test. Truth in testing, this will defend. Wismer 6, signing off.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commander of White Sands Missile Range, Colonel Johnathon Nelson.
General Gaydon, General Morgan, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, our soldiers and joint service members, civilians, and families of White Sands Missile Range, good morning. First, General Gaydon, sir, I want to thank you for your tremendous leadership and mentorship, but most of all, for the opportunity to command this historic formation. It is truly an honor and a privilege. White Sands Missile Range is not just an installation, as has been said before. It's America's range, a national treasure that has supported national strategic defense objectives for over 8 decades. General Morgan, sir, I want to thank you for your leadership and mentorship over this past year, but also for your vision and the sturdy foundation that you have laid for this great team going forward. And as we discussed yesterday, I look forward to working with this team to continue the momentum that you've built. Gina and I can also not thank you guys enough, you and Stacy, for a better transition. We couldn't have asked for anything better. We are both very grateful. To the men and women of White Sands Missile Range, your expertise, professionalism, and commitment are unmatched. Your reputation precedes you, and I look forward to serving alongside you to execute our critical mission in support of our nation's defense. To our joint service, private industry, and academia partners, I look forward to continued engagement in support of that very mission. Gina, thank you for your unwavering support for the past 32 years in doing this together. Kind of a little inside baseball. When I was offered this position, I didn't ask her. But luckily, she was on board. We're both humbled and privileged to join and serve with this great team. And as my first act in command, and in coordination with your supervisor, I would like to extend the workforce 59 minutes, America's Range, first to test, truth in testing.
Please stand and join us in singing the Army song. The words for the song are printed on the back of your program.
Army and
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending the White Sands Missile Range Change of Command ceremony. Brigadier General Morgan will remain on the field to say goodbye to well-wishers. Colonel Nelson invites you to the new commander's welcome reception in the Frontier Club directly behind you. Truth in testing, America's range, first to test. All right.